when I really feel like I started to be able to fine-tune, well, I'm still fine-tuning them, but when I started to really start thinking pedagogically about what my approach was in the classroom in regards to teaching diversity, teaching to diversity, it really came to me when I was in my master's program at Carnegie Mellon University, and I was working with Linda Flower, and we were doing a community project at a place called the Community Literacy Center, and we were working from a dual disciplinary perspective of cognitive psychology and writing and rhetoric. And this literacy center was built at the corner of a town park where two different gang lines converged, and it was a very violent park. There had been a lot of shootings and fights in this park, and the goal of the literacy center was to bring together members of the different gangs and have them come in and sit around the table and learn how to speak to each other, how to use words, writing as a basis for learning and problem solving, and then also how to communicate with police officers and mayors and parents and school administrators. And so it was an opportunity for also those people who may have been perceived to have been in positions of authority by the youth to come to the table and also learn how to dialogue and speak with the youth. And I was introduced at that time to some pedagogical tools in the form of writing assignments or verbal exercises in dialogue. There was another one that was called Options and Outcomes, where you would have students look at different options and the different people that they could engage with in order to try to institute the type of change that they wanted in their life, or to inform somebody about a certain perspective or maybe a stereotype that they had. And we would look at what the options are for achieving that goal and then what the outcomes could be. And so I started working in a more, I guess, pedagogically strategic way with more diverse populations and using writing as a tool for bringing people together. So in the case of dialogue, it's a motion that goes like this, and it's about getting all of the possible perspectives on the topic on the table and expanding them outward. And even if it's not one that we hold personally, to try to imagine what some of the counter arguments would be or some of the counter opinions would be. And students, I think, tend to find this to be relieving because there isn't really a right answer. It's just about putting every possible response to the topic that we're dealing with out there. Also related to this is the way that I like to redefine or reclaim rhetoric for students. And I often go back to Aristotle's definition, which is discovering all of the available means of persuasion in a given situation. And what that means to me, and then what I put forth towards my students, is very similar to this dialogue, which is that we have a given situation, and that as rhetors, it's our responsibility to understand all of the available means of persuasion, every different perspective that could be put forth towards the topic. And then based upon our own past experience and looking at the proofs and the logic and the credibility of claims, and then looking closely at ethics, that they can decide where they stand on the issues. But initially, asking them to try on all of the different perspectives that could be put towards this issue, and to know how to therefore not just argue on behalf of one perspective, but to also know how to respond to these other perspectives that are out there in the world. Tolerance is not about a teacher. If anything, I think we're more prone to teach intolerance, because students learn pretty quickly what they can and can't say to us in our classrooms, what's going to get them better grades and not so great grades. And I'm not saying across the boards, but it's not uncommon that you hear this from students. And so teaching for tolerance isn't about me, it's about opening up the classroom space in a way that the student conversation dominates. And it's not that it can dominate all of the time, because I certainly have a lot of information that I would like to share, but that it to allow it to allow their stories to become the stories that I tell.